Good evening, this is Nick and welcome back to Outriders Gaming. This is my preview video for the tournament that we will be attending this weekend, Call to War. So Call to War is being held up in Maelstrom Games in Mansfield and is being organised by Will Goodwin. It's a 2,400 points Warhammer Fantasy tournament using the ETC comp. I'll put a link to the full ETC comp pack with this video, but I'll just go over the major points. So first up, characters get Lookout Sirs versus the big final spells of death, such as Dwellers, Final Transportation, Dreaded 13th, etc. No special characters, no more than 3 identical core choices, some cap on war machines which don't affect me. The main one is a general comp that only 45 models with missile weapons with a range of 20 inches or more, not including war machines, are allowed, which kind of hurts Woodelves quite a bit. BSBs can take their normal equipment, so mine wouldn't lose his bow for once. The rest pretty standard. The units can't be more than 40 models or 450 points. Now the magic is where it changes. So players can only use a maximum of 5 power dice to cast a spell, and for Death and Shadow that's a max of 4. You can only use 12 power dice each phase, and you can only generate 2 extra power dice or dispel dice. On top of that, certain items count as generating dispel dice or power dice, such as a dispel scroll counts as generating an extra dispel dice, which means if you have a dispel scroll, you can only generate 1 more dispel dice per per phase. Right. Before I get on to my army creation, I just want to point out, Call to War. So, like I said, Call to War is being held up in Maelstrom Games. Great place for wargaming. It's a dedicated venue for just tournaments, really. Room for 120 players, I think. Just nice big tables. Scenery's already there. They have a bar downstairs. There's a shop. So if you ever have your effort up in the Mansfield area, go check it out. It's really good. And actually, Call to War, a little point of interest, is the first competitive event I went to a year ago. So yes, I'm only a year into competitive Warhammer. So I suppose after this event, it was officially my first year has been and gone, really. Doesn't time fly? Anyway, on to my army list. So I'm taking my Woodelves. So just quickly, the Woodelf comp, here it is. So Woodelf armies have an extra 200 points for their roster, so I get a tasty 2,600 points to play with. I can take 4 of the same core units. Only Glade Guards, including Scouts, count for a max of 45 models with shooting. So Glade Riders, Way Watchers don't count. And all victory points scored against this army are decreased by 10%, which will be useful. This doesn't include banner bonuses, general bonuses, BSB bonuses or anything. So you still get a full 100 points for killing my general. Now, in theory, this is all nice and well, 200 points extra to play with, but when I'm limited to 45 Glade Guard, I didn't really know what to do with these points, to be honest with you. If any of you watch TMA Richards, Tom Richards battle reports on YouTube, I assume most of you do, he'll just check out his Call to War preview. He has a good old rant about this, and I agree with him. It's completely ridiculous. What are we going to spend these extra points on? There's only so much you can do with this army, as it is. So let's go into my list. So what I decided to do is, basically, in my normal list I have 60 odd Glade Guards, so I've got to drop 15 of them, so I save some points there. So where do I go from there? Well, so my first thing into my list was 45 Glade Guard, of course. Now I'd normally run units of 12, because the slightly OCD person in me says 12 Glade Guard with a musician is a nice 150 points, and I have the movement trace for it. But I'm going to try something different. So I've got 3 units of 10 with musicians and a unit of 15 with musician and the flaming banner. Slightly smaller units, but it'll help with the deployment. 2 units of Dryads, which I've dropped down to 8 Dryads instead of 10, which I normally take. This is to free up some points later, and you'll see why. My 6 Treekin, my 2 Treemen, and that's the bare bones of the list that I normally run. Now, I've also got my Noble BSB, who, with his Hell of Doom arrow, and because I don't have to buy Masindal's Bane, it's freed up the points for me to give him a 2-up ward against Flaming with the Dragonbane gem. And I've got my Spellweaver level 4. Now this is where things go off the beaten track a little bit. So I've included an eagle in here because I've got 2,600 points, I can actually fit in 2 treemen and an eagle, which is brilliant. Which left me with quite a few points to play with, and I didn't quite know what to do. So one thing that I've heard, and I've seen Tom play with a lot, is Law of Beast, and I wanted to try it out. And I've also used to play with quite a lot the Wand of the Witch Helm, which allows me to reroll Dispels, which makes you quite good defensively. But if you've only got the one mage in your army, it's like you have to choose between that and a Dispel Scroll, and I normally go with the Dispel Scroll. But with all the extra points, what it means is, what I've been able to do is I've taken my level 4 on life with my Ruby Ring of Ruin to cause some long range damage because I'm kind of lacking in that otherwise in the magic phase, and I've given him the Wand of the Witch Helm. So I've got a level 4 re-rolling Dispel attempts, and I've added in a level 3 Spellweaver on Law of Beasts and given him the Dispel Scroll and the Resplendence of Luminescence, which gives him and his unit magical attacks, which means I should be fairly solid defensively in magic, and it gives me access to Wild Form, which is brilliant on Dryads or Treekin. Curse of Anrahir, which is great because at this particular tournament they have ruled that open ground counts as terrain, so it's always in effect, and even the -1 to hit is brilliant. Or even the Amber Spear, which gives me something to try and deal with Greater Demons, Steam Tanks, just big gribblies really, gives me an option. So it means I'm quite versatile in the magic phase. I've sunk a lot of points into my characters, which I don't really like to do because they're really squishy. But it gives me backup, so hopefully this will work out well. And after that, it left me with some points to spare. I think originally I had 50 points to spare because I had my 2 units of 10 Dryads. So what I decided to do, which is why I cut down the Dryads down to 8 each, freed up enough points, and I've included a small unit of 5 War Dancers. I know they're really fragile, but it gives me access to killing blow in the army. I had a practice game against Tom's Dark Elves, and they took out one of his unkillable Pegasus, and that's enough for me. If they do that once or twice over the tournament, they'll have got their 90 points back. If nothing else, they're a fairly expensive redirector, less than 100 points, and they'll probably kill something that charges into it. They'll reduce their effectiveness, so it's not all doom and gloom. We'll see how they do over the tournament, really. So I'm not sure how happy I am with this list. The main problem I think I'm going to have is keeping my characters safe in such small units, because they can't join many of the other ones. Because war machines can whittle them down and then they lose their lookout sirs, so I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I've only had a couple of practice games. I lost against Dark Elves and won against Woodelves, so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going into this thing thinking I've only got 15 less Glade Guard than I normally do, and to be honest with you, in a lot of my games I use one of my units of Glade Guards as a sacrificial drop, so I've never really got that many more than 45 Glade Guard firing at a single unit at the same time anyway. On top of that, I've got better magic than I normally do. I've got a couple more redirectors, and it's more difficult for people to score victory points against me. And on top of that, the ETC comp is pretty harsh on a lot of other builds. So, I'm quite happy about this overall, I think, because my army's been made better in some senses, fairly crippled in others, but I'm hoping I can learn to cope with it, whereas other people's armies have been made trickier. Now the 5 dice cap for casting magic is going to hamper me somewhat, because I've got used to being able to just 6 dice dwellers, because I'm well skillful. you know, and on 5 dice it's only just average to cast the big dwellers, so I'll have to try and hold back on that one and keep it for when I desperately need it, rather than just speculative dwellers at long range. And get used to using Law of Beasts. So there we are. That's my army for Call to War. Hopefully, so it's this weekend, 5th, 6th and 7th of May. I think, I don't know the dates off by heart, but whatever this weekend is, 5th, 6th of May, up in Maelstrom. Both James and John are coming up, so I'm hoping to possibly get some recording done up there, some previews, our thoughts, maybe some practice games on the Friday night. And I'll see you next week with my tournament reports. Good night.